Hello and welcome everyone. Before I commence this session, I'd like to acknowledge the Bunurong people as the traditional custodians of the land that I'm calling from. I also acknowledge their neighbours, the WaterAid people of the Kulin Nation. And I'd like to pay my respects to ancestors and elders who always have and always will care for country and community today and for future generations. And I'd also encourage everyone on this call to drop into the chat your name and where you're calling from, acknowledging that we have people joining from all over the world. So please do feel free to share any insights on the traditional practices and people from where you're calling. Aboriginal people were the first scientists and water managers of our land. Their way of life was centred around ensuring that the use of all natural resources was sustainable, and water is a significant part of that balance. In the traditional ways of managing the health of country, there is no strict separation of water, land, air, plants, and animals, as they're all perceived as interconnected. And they're managed as a whole to keep country healthy. But in recent decades, we can see that water has been managed by the government separately from the way that land is managed, and as a resource or commodity that can be bought and sold, no longer belonging to the river itself. What this means is that water is sold to those who have the most money to pay for it and often stored outside of the river, rather than seeing it distributed to where it is needed in the environment. So for us as a society to make progress towards achieving SDG 6 in the face of significant climatic change, we must learn from these traditional practices and manage our environment and natural resources in a holistic manner and not as separate entities. So with that in mind, I'd like to welcome you all to today's session, focusing on the role of early career professionals in driving the climate, wash and water resource management agenda forward. So we want to be thinking about how we can learn from the past and pave our way into the future to manage our water resources sustainably and ensure that we leave no one behind. So thank you for joining today's session. We're thrilled that so many people have shown interest and registered for this event from all around the world. And we hope that you'll all leave this session with some new insights, stimulating conversations and ideas for how you may want to implement some of that thinking in your own work. My name is Tanvi. I'm the Regional Climate Change Advisor for WaterAid Australia, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Jeremy Collitz, who is a Research Principal at the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, Sydney, and Dr. Hannah Barrowman, who is a researcher at the Australia Pacific Climate Partnership. So for today's session, we have a very exciting and insightful agenda planned. We'll kickstart with a short icebreaker, and then we'll move into our guest speaker presentations. And then for the last segment, we'll break out into groups to have some discussions, and then finally wrap up with a short plenary to share some of those discussions with the rest of the group. So for our icebreaker today, we have a mini wash and climate trivia. So let's get straight into it. So our first question is, how many people in the world do not have access to safe drinking water at home? Is it A, 1.2 billion, B, 2.2 billion, C, 500 million, or D, 200 million? And feel free to write down your answers on a piece of paper, and we will tally them all up at the end and share with the rest of the group. And this is going to be a lightning trivia round, so I'll be moving through the questions pretty quickly. Second question. How many people in the world do not have access to basic hand washing facilities at home? Is it A, 1.5 billion, B, 3 million people, C, 3 billion people, or D, 600 million people? Next question. By 2025, how much of the world's population will be living in water-stressed areas? A, 50%, B, 25%, C, 66%, or D, 35%? Next question. Water scarcity exists when water supply is below what level in a country or region? Is it A, 1,000 cubic meters per person per year, B, 2,000 cubic meters per person per year, C, 500 cubic meters per person per year, or D, 5,000 cubic meters per person per year? Next question. Many of the world's most water-stressed countries in the Middle East rely heavily on which technology to provide fresh drinking water? A, rainwater capture, B, wastewater recycling, C, importing water, or D, desalination? And final question, roughly 40% of global food production relies on water from which source? Is it A, direct use of rainfall, B, groundwater, C, rivers, or D, lakes? So just a note on the answers, if everyone can just make a note of answers on a piece of paper rather than in the chat. We'll go through the answers soon. Great. So how did everyone find that trivia? Was it hard? Was it easy? Feel free to write your thoughts into the chat, or alternatively, you can come off mute and share your thoughts if you'd like to. It was interesting. Yeah, definitely interesting. I know I definitely learned a lot putting it together. So I hope everyone else did too. Yeah, informative. Any other thoughts before we jump into the answers? Interactive? Yeah, great. Yeah, some questions really make you think. Thought-provoking and challenging for sure. Great. So let's jump into the answers. So first one, how many people in the world do not have access to safe drinking water at home? And that is a whopping 2.2 billion people, which is a huge chunk of the population. So hopefully many of you got that right. So give yourself 1 point if you got that right. Next question, how many people in the world do not have access to a basic hand washing facility at home? The answer is 3 billion, so even more than the previous question. So you can really see that, you know, hand washing can become a real issue around the world in many of these locations. Next question. By 2025, almost 66% of the world's population will be living in water-stressed areas. That's more than half of our population. And it's quite scary to think that 2025 is just around the corner. So give yourself another point if you got that right. Next question. Water scarcity exists when water supply is below 1,000 cubic meters per person per year. So hopefully many of you might have known that or learned something new today. Next question. Many of the world's most water-stressed countries in the Middle East rely heavily on desalination to provide fresh drinking water. So give yourself another point if you got that correct. And last question, roughly 40% of global food production relies on groundwater. So give yourself another point if you got that correct. So tally up all of your points and feel free to write into the chat what you got and you know, any other thoughts that you might want to share. 3.5, great. Hopefully you learned something new out of those questions. Four. Great, lots of fours coming through. You got the last question right first and then wrong. Yep. Thought I was being pessimistic, assuming 66% of the population. Yep, for sure. And yes, definitely, the statistics are definitely quite overwhelming. Great. So thank you so much, everyone, for taking part in that trivia. Hopefully you found that insightful and learned something new. We'll make a move into the next segment of our session today. And for that, I'll pass on to my co-host, Hannah, to introduce our guest speakers. Over to you, Hannah.
Thank you, Tanvi. And thank you for everyone for joining today. And I guess good morning. I'm based in Europe at the moment, but I know it's also good afternoon, good evening for others, and a very good morning for those based in the US at the moment. So I guess what we really want to focus on in this session is exploring what we as early career professionals bring to the table for both the organizations that we work with and the water and wash sector, and how that interacts with climate change. And so this includes the different skills and knowledges that we as early career professionals bring to the table, but it also includes the different energies and personalities that we bring, and also the different experiences that we've been through. So you'll know that a big part of today's involves breakout sessions. And before we go into those breakout sessions, we'll just listen to 3 guest presenters first, tell us their stories of working in the wash and water sectors. They will highlight a particularly interesting story that they've worked in their organizations, and also some of the challenges that they've come across in their workspace. So the first presentation is by Tima Wickham. Tima is a research project officer of the Water and for Women Impact and Innovation Grant Project, working with Plan International Pacific in the Solomon Islands program unit. And she is a WASH practitioner who is very passionate about community engagement work. She is a 2-time Australia Awards Scholarship awardee, completing a master's in integrated water management with Griffith University, and has a bachelor's degree in science, majoring in environmental science with James Cook University. IT, can we please play Tima's presentation now?
Hello, everyone. My name is Tima Wickham. I'm from the Solomon Islands, and I currently work for Plan International Pacific Solomon Islands Program Unit. Today, I'm very grateful to be part of this early career professional session, and I will share my work experiences in WASH and climate change, especially in one interesting WASH-related project that I worked in the Solomon Islands. So I started off my career journey in a complete different field. I was a newly graduate student with a bachelor's degree in science, majoring in environmental science, but worked in a business company. So I was very excited when I got my first proper job related to my field of study to work for the Solomon Islands Water Sector Adaptation Project, or SUSAP, as a provincial project officer, WASH. So why the project? Solomon Islands, like other small island developing states around the world, is at the front line of climate change. It faces a range of specific climate change impacts, such as sea level rise, more variable and unpredictable rainfall, and more intense extreme weather patterns. So these have severe consequences on the components of WASH systems, such as the water resources, infrastructure, the demand and access. And likewise, climate-related impacts on the quality and quantity of water, and has a gender dimension. For example, the safety and security of women and girls are compromised as they need to travel further to collect water, also leading to less time for other activities. So the program responds to the impacts of changing climatic conditions, particularly for vulnerable communities in Solomon Islands. The project emphasized a medium to long-term participatory planning and consultations. A critical part of these consultations was establishing an understanding of water sanitation and hygiene issues facing the communities. So the consultations forms the basis of how SUSAP's work was implemented during the life of the project. So as the provincial project officer, I facilitated community adaptation planning, coordinated project workshops, training, meetings, and conducted awareness. SUSAP's interventions focused on improving multiple water sources for water supply security. It built new wells and rehabilitated existing wells, protecting the water source from contamination from animals or even people. So the project helps to increase community resilience through installation of communal rainwater tanks at schools, sports building, clinic, to increase water storage capacity. During my assignment, I was most directly responsible for coordinating the implementation of these project activities at the targeted community level. So I had to closely monitor and review the progress of site activities to ensure they are delivered on time and to a high quality. Understanding about the causes and impacts of climate change is still limited in Solomon Islands, so raising awareness is important because it allows citizens and the government to decide how to best prepare for their communities and adapt to the threat of climate change. So I was also responsible for collaborating with key project partners to conduct awareness events. So there's a range of skill set that I've brought to the project. So one is I'm good at communication. I was able to demonstrate communication skills, both written and verbal, and develop right way to communicate, especially the scientific concepts of climate change to ensure the audience correctly interprets information. So it's also an advantage that I speak the local language, which helps with translation. Also, I have good work ethic. I treat people fairly and demonstrate integrity, and I was dedicated and committed to executing my work plans. Also, time management is one of the attributes that I brought to the project. So working against deadlines means sometimes you have to be prepared to stay up late and not sleep until you get things done. And also you have to be good at evidence gathering and critical thinking skills, and also be able to actually plan, coordinate, and conduct a project. So there are also some challenges and obstacles that I faced in my role. Our cultural restrictions tend to hold females back. So this was one of the things I faced fresh in the workforce, but fairness, empowerment, and encouragement to amplify for others were shown by my work colleagues. And this I see is a priority commitment that holds a team together. Apart from personal challenges, most of the challenges that I face have actually been operational and logistical challenges. For example, during bad weather, traveling becomes a challenge due to poor road conditions, posing safety risks to staff and key project partners. So we avoid traveling during times of the year when the weather is known to be changeable and during rough seas. Some areas that I worked in have no electricity, so this is when good planning and preparation is key. The project has procured safety and emergency kits for boat traveling, containing life jackets, satellite phones, global positioning systems, and first aid kits. But I think the positive experiences are really working with these communities. So going to often quite rural and inaccessible areas to really understand what their water sanitation and hygiene issues and needs are. So for those who are interested and would like to explore the area of WASH further, and also want to work in development programs in your own countries or even internationally, the WASH sector is quite a diverse area. You could be working, for example, in advocacy, you could be working in policy or in research, or more in programs or projects like myself. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in the WASH sector. I think if you have the opportunity to, for example, do internships or do voluntary work with organizations, contact them in country and see if you can do some voluntary work. Any practical experience you can have in the field is invaluable. Or if you are in the workforce and planning to do further studies, for example, master's studies, please go for it. I did my master's in integrated water management at the Griffith University, and this is also another great opportunity to develop different skill sets. I believe many countries in the world need a lot more people to join in the WASH sector, so if you do, stick with it. It has been one of the most rewarding experiences for me so far, and I guarantee it'll be the same for you. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time and for listening.
Thank you, Tima. The next presentation we'll have is from Neha Shetty. Neha is an environmental engineer working in Alluvium Consulting, and she works within the Urban Water Strategy team in Melbourne in Australia. Neha has a background in engineering and a master's in environment and sustainability. Neha is also part of the Young Water Professionals Committee at the Australian Water Association. Having lived and studied in two of the most water-stressed countries in the world, Saudi Arabia and India, she holds a strong interest in water conservation, security, and integrated water management. Can we please play Neha's presentation now? Thanks, IT team.
Hi everyone, my name is Neha, and today I'll be presenting on my perspective as an early career professional in tackling climate change challenges in the urban water sector. Before I get into my presentation, I'd like to give my acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm presenting from today. I would also like to pay my respects to the Wurundjeri elders, past, present, and emerging. To give you a quick introduction about myself, I work as an environmental engineer in the Urban Water Strategy team at Alluvium Consulting. Alluvium Consulting is a science and engineering consultancy firm that supports governments and businesses to solve complex environmental issues, mainly within the water sector. I work from the Melbourne office here in Australia, and key parts of my role include data and spatial analysis through GIS and modeling softwares, understanding integrated water management strategies and urban water policies set by the council, state government, and the federal government, investigating water-sensitive urban design opportunities, and communicating science through visual and reporting. As I work in the urban water team, most of my projects are within metropolitan Melbourne region. One of the most interesting projects that I've worked in is identifying stormwater harvesting opportunities for City of Melbourne. Similar to the ongoing climate change issues around the world, Melbourne has been experiencing more severe rainfall events, increasing the likelihood of flooding as well as storm surges. And by 2050, there will also be less than 20% rainfall during spring, which would mean severe conditions leading up to summer bushfire season. To tackle with these issues, we worked with Melbourne City Council to identify alternative water sources. Now you must be wondering, what is stormwater harvesting? Well, in an overly developed city like Melbourne, as you can see in this image here, most of the rainfall doesn't permeate and turns into runoff, which enters the stormwater drains. We then capture this runoff from the stormwater drains and divert them into parks and open spaces for treatment and irrigation. For this project, we worked on most of the really famous parks around Melbourne as well as recreational centers. I worked as a project analyst on this project. I carried out spatial and data analysis to narrow down stormwater harvesting opportunities to help decrease council's potable water use. By doing this, it not only helps council achieve its targets of tackling climate change by drought-proofing, reducing flood impacts, building resilience, and also increasing livability, but it also saves potable water to be used for population consumption instead. As an early career professional, I brought in a lot of curiosity and keenness to learn, but along with that, I brought in a fresh and diverse perspective on water conservation. As someone who's been brought up in water-stressed countries, I was able to implement some of my perspective into this project. Although this was a great project and I got a great opportunity to work with some amazing team members, but like any other project, it came with its own set of challenges. From my perspective, these are the main challenges I faced and sometimes still face as an early career professional. Firstly, imposter syndrome. I think a lot of us have experienced this, the feeling of not being capable enough or doubting our own abilities. For example, during this project, I could see myself work tirelessly to prove myself, and if I wasn't able to answer a question by my project manager or client, I'd feel deflated and doubt my abilities. But in hindsight, I realized I was setting unrealistic expectations from myself. I wasn't expected to know the answers to everything. This would usually lead to my lack of confidence. Even if I did think of some ideas on the project process or technical opinion, I would think they weren't good enough, or maybe think that I was missing something out because of my lack of experience. And I would usually keep all of these ideas to myself. And that caused a lot of the time where I had some good ideas but never really expressed it. And this was due to my lack of confidence. I'll be touching back on this during my recommendation on how I overcame it. Another challenge I faced was working in an interdisciplinary team. In a consultancy, you get to work with people from diverse education and work backgrounds. As someone who came from an engineering background, it took me some time to learn working style and communication preferences of my team. It can be really challenging, but interdisciplinary teams definitely have their own benefits. It's extremely crucial to learn different aspects and perspective to grow and deliver a good project. Learning from my mistakes and the challenges that I faced, these are my recommendations for any early career professional. The first one, ask questions, even if you think it's a small doubt, or if you don't understand something, or even if you think the question is stupid. No matter what it is, you should definitely ask questions. As my project manager said to me, if you don't ask questions, you won't learn, and if you don't learn, you won't grow. And keeping that in mind, I was able to ask them all sorts of questions, be it small or big, and that definitely helped me understand the technical process as well as understanding the importance of this project. Secondly, reach out for advice. During this project, I was able to speak to my supervisors about my challenges and imposter syndrome and the lack of confidence. They helped me overcome this through advice and made me realize that this is all a part of the learning process. I need to understand that me as an early career professional wasn't expected to do a lot of the things that I was expecting from myself. And overcoming this and as well as asking questions helped me build that confidence and work in understanding and delivering a better project from my end as well. Thirdly, create a support group. You're not alone and you aren't the only person going through the struggles in your early career. Speak to your peers, create a support group. It has definitely helped me having a group that I can go to for some upliftment and a place where we support each other. This has definitely helped me overcoming a lot of my challenges and having a safe space where I can talk to people who are in the similar space as me. This concludes my presentation. I hope you all resonated with at least a small part of my presentation. As an early career professional, I'm sure there's lots of challenges, and like me, I hope you all are also learning from your mistakes and the challenges and getting better and becoming a professional in your own field. I wish you all the best in your careers. Thank you.
Thank you, Neha. The final presentation is from Moi Kiang Det. Moi Kiang is a Cambodian and currently taking academic studies as a fourth-year student, majoring in food science and technology and the English language. Moi Kiang has also work experience in drinking water parameters analysis. Can we please play Moi Kiang's presentation now? Thank you.
Welcome to the Early Career Professional session. I would like to express my thankfulness to the organizers of the event for inviting me in. It is an honor to have the opportunity to deliver a speech about my personal experience in water and wash sectors as an early career professional. Here is the agenda of my presentation, in which the subject can be looked at under the following heading. First of all, let me begin with a brief introduction about myself. My name is Moi Kiang. I am from Cambodia. I am a four-year student pursuing in 2 bachelor degrees. While taking academic study, I have currently and successfully completed the professional training in Young Professional Program in Water, Sanitation and Hygiene, which is conducted by Center for Sustainable Water. Through attending a CSW program, I have obtained additional knowledge related to water, and especially I was impacted about wash sector in Cambodia, in which I have never perceived before. In this slide, there are information provided such as 1 in 4 Cambodians have no access to safe water, 1 in 3 Cambodians don't have access to proper sanitation, and 2 in 5 rural Cambodians don't have access to basic hand washing facility. Cambodia is a developing country where the wash issues indicated are mainly occur in rural area and some parts of here urban Cambodians. Fortunately, both governmental and non-governmental organizations have been taking action and striving to promote better access to wash for all. Cambodia has vision and mission to reach SDG 6 by 2030. Center for Sustainable Water delivers an educational platform that envisions all Cambodian communities to have access to wash service through building human resource capacity to bring greater impact. CSW is non-governmental organization supported by Australian Aid and WaterAid Cambodia. Each program is conducted for 3 months to provide participants training sessions to impart WASH-related knowledge and to develop soft skills, along with practical methods to respond to the demands of qualified human resource in WASH sector. The project that I have enrolled in CSW organization is what I am extremely interested with. The reason why I am fascinated with this project is because the organization allowed us to design and establish our own project related to water, sanitation, and hygiene according to our passion and potential. Particularly, my team have organized a research project related to water issues in a certain rural Cambodia under the topic of hygiene assessment on household water use in Kampong flooding village. The objective in our research study is to collect current and accurate information about household water use quality in order to assess on family hygiene performance. First, the proposal solution can be addressed for observed issues. In this figure, show us about the condition of water that is used by the family in the village. Within our project study, we have detected that the water samples are mostly contaminated by fecal bacteria, even in the water that families use for drinking. Also, water that is extracted for using in domestic work mainly contains high turbidity. Due to these remarkable problems, we have proposed an innovative idea solution, which we named Water Safety Bag. It is a package of two chemical substances. Calcium hypochlorite is capable of killing bacteria and inactivating other microorganisms, whereas polyaluminum chloride has ability to reduce turbidity in water. We ultimately found that this solution can furthermore be usable, beneficial, affordable, and convenient at the time of emergency like flood, where pipe water is difficult and impossible to be supplied. Besides technical attribute, I and my team have also brought social attribute to the program on the final pitching day through our presentation and exhibition about the novelty of our research in order to raise awareness of current water crisis in Kampong flooding village in Cambodia, and to widely spread the newfound water treatment to diverse organizations who participated. Conducting a research project may possibly bear various challenges. Within my research study, I have also confronted some challenges. The most significant one was the unpredictable trajectory of the spreading of new COVID-19 variant outbreak throughout the city and provinces. During study fields for data collection, my team members were infected and isolated. First, I was solely responsible for interviewing the village families and collecting water samples. Despite the difficulties, I was so impressed and genuinely thankful to the stakeholders and people in the villages for hospitality, cooperation, and approval to accomplish survey. Additionally, there were also other minor challenges, such as the lack of adequate laboratory analysis. However, I would like to extend my thankfulness to the organization and mentor that strive to support us attending lab analysis data as much as possible. It was also a challenge to finally and fully establish the research study within a short period of time. It was impossible to be done without my team members' contributions, responsibilities, and creativities. Overall, I have come to understand that the project benefits me a lot. It has offered me additional knowledge, especially with water-related and wash system. Also, it has developed my soft skill. Moreover, the program has influenced me to pursue career in wash sector. In that, I have shown my vision and passion. Before ending my speech, I would like to bring some recommendation to who wish to become a professional in wash sector. I'm urging you to go for it. You may basically join the foundation course related to wash system, which will offer you the introduction to everything you need to know about the system. Afterwards, try best to embrace every opportunity that come across. Be interactive, engaged, and available. Especially to my fellow Cambodia, I am encouraging you that if you have passion in this field, begin your step with commitment and determination, because you are so potential to bring positive impact to Cambodian WASH. I have end to my speech. I would like to say thank you for your paying attention and listen to my presentation.
Thank you, Moi Kiang. So just a quick summary before we break out into the breakout rooms. I think what is interesting is that we have 3 panelists here working in quite different contexts: WASH in Pacific Small Island developing states, water in large and populous urban environments, water safety and household consumption in rural areas in developing countries. Yet some of the skills that they highlight are probably quite universal for most of us. So they revolved around working with communities, speaking local languages, having good communication skills and ability to communicate complex ideas and terms and concepts, critical thinking skills and ability to be quite innovative, as in the case with Moi Kiang. And I guess on this front, we also bring a curiosity and a keenness to learn, as Neha mentioned. Many of us probably now have experience in working in different social ecological environments and systems. And that's something that Neha has mentioned has been important to her work as well. And I guess some of the challenges that we encounter are potentially universal. There's the operation and logistical challenges that Timo mentioned of just getting activities and project resources out the door. And perhaps we don't yet have the experience to navigate these situations effectively just yet. As Neha mentioned, many of us probably suffer from imposter syndrome and a fear of not knowing enough, but we have to understand that we are just early career professionals and we can't be expected to know that much at this stage in our career. And I guess lastly, a really important thing is what Moi Kiang points out is that many of us, we've probably started these important positions or our careers in the time of COVID and lockdown restrictions. And this has probably really affected our ability to grow in our jobs and the fields by restricting a number of opportunities that have come our way, restricting our sort of ability to make networks and close partnerships with other groups. And so, yeah, I think this is another interesting universal challenge that all of us may have experienced. But we'll be interested to learn more from you and hear more from you in the breakout rooms that we've got going on now. So over to you. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you to the speakers for those really excellent presentations. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to those, and those have gotten the gears turning in your head and stimulated some ideas, because now we're moving on to an interactive part of the session today, which is breakout rooms. So we're going to be split into different rooms, and in each room, the participants will discuss 2 questions. So there's a thematic question relating to climate change, water and WASH, and then a second question about the role or the contribution of early career professionals in addressing the issue of climate change in the WASH sector. And we hope this is going to be a good opportunity for you to learn from each other, to share some ideas based on your own experiences, what the presentations you just heard now prompted you to think about, anything you've ever read and you would like to share. And it's also a good opportunity for you to express what kind of support or what kind of advice that you feel like you need from the WASH sector in order to position yourselves as early career professionals to address climate change throughout your entire careers. There is a lot of interest in what you guys have to share, and we would like to pass on a lot of the information that you share about the needs of early career professionals to the Water and WASH Futures Committee, which I'll talk about a little bit after we get out of the breakout rooms. So with that, we'll open the breakout rooms. There's going to be 4 thematic sessions. One is related to intersectoral collaboration. One room will discuss greenhouse gas emissions. Another room will discuss gender, disability, and social inclusion issues. And then a fourth room will discuss the most pressing challenges that climate change creates for water and wash. So we're going to be randomly allocated, and we'll have about 30 minutes to discuss. We'll have a plenary where I'll share back results at the end, and then we'll close after that. So Karen, please open up the breakout rooms, and look forward to hearing the plenary in about 30 minutes. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Hope you had some really good discussions in your breakout room. My room was really good. So I actually might take the opportunity to be the first one to report back for my group. And
recording in progress.
We focused on greenhouse gas emissions as our sort of thematic topic. And we discussed some ways that the wash and water resource management sector could contribute to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So one thing is there's sort of an initial question of how much greenhouse gas emissions do the wash and water resource management sectors actually contribute, and in particular from water, where the majority of greenhouse gas emissions coming from. So there's questions about how we might collect data on that and sort of learn what are the intervention areas where we could make the greatest impact. For example, irrigation, which relies on perhaps diesel pumping of groundwater, might be a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions. Renewable energies for the sort of treatment and transport of water, fecal sludge, wastewater could reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There were some interesting ideas about improving access to piped water and reducing the dependency on trucking in water during droughts. People noted that in their countries, it's quite common for water shortages to occur, and then water is transported around trucks on the city, and perhaps greenhouse gas emissions associated with that. There was also interesting ideas about how we could recycle nutrient-rich wastewater and fecal sludge and use that as a local fertilizer to reduce dependence on imported fertilizers, either domestic or internationally. Realizing that importing materials and for the agriculture sector contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, and that sanitation could actually contribute to reducing those if we could produce it locally. We talked about nature-based solutions, which by their nature might often emit fewer greenhouse gas emissions than more conventional technologies. The application of circular economy concepts around reusing fecal sludge and wastewater, for example, for agriculture, as we discussed. Storing water locally when it's available during the rainy season to reduce the need, again, to truck in water during dry seasons. And finally, strong governance approaches to make sure that we can actually implement all of these solutions together, and taking a systems approach, which might help with some of that intersectoral collaboration that I just mentioned around water and agriculture. In terms of the second question, our second question was on what do early career professionals need from the sectors in order to put them in a position to succeed in the fight against climate change. We had a lot of really interesting ideas about increasing the connectivity of early career professionals, having young professional networks that are addressing climate change and water and wash issues, and keeping those young professionals connected. Providing funding opportunities for young people to test innovations and their ideas, making funding available for researchers, for young researchers to learn and produce knowledge on key issues that they're concerned about. Creating labs to help young people, again, make innovations and test those, and improve multi-sectoral engagement across local levels so that early career professionals from different disciplines, different backgrounds can work together. There was also ideas to create more internships for graduating students so that they can immediately kind of take what they've learned and say undergraduate or postgraduate degrees and apply those in an internship. Platforms for early career professionals to discuss issues and increasing the job market to give more younger people opportunities to work on climate issues. We talked about mentoring, and how improved mentoring could help early career professionals throughout their careers, but it's also that mentoring can be two-way, and early career professionals can also use mentoring relationships to inform more senior staff about what they feel is important. And especially when we're talking about mentoring, that we want to make this opportunity available to people in low and middle income countries. So how can we develop mentors in low and middle income countries rather than asking people from high income countries to go to low and middle income countries to provide mentorship? How can we build research capacity locally? For example, through implementing water and wash and climate change degrees at local universities. And networking, finally, as I think was mentioned before, is an important one. But I think one overall key theme from this question was that we thought it was really important to give opportunities to disadvantaged groups and people in low and middle income countries, opportunities to build the expertise locally, rather than asking people to either fly to high income countries or asking people from high income countries to fly to low and middle income countries. So I'll leave it there. I think I went a little bit long. I will now hand off to Tanvi for a summary. Thanks, Tanvi.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. Sounds like you had some really great discussions. We had some great discussions as well. We looked at the thematic area of multi-sectoral collaboration. And we talked about how important it is to have interdisciplinary teams in the projects that we work in. So, for example, in the WASH sector, we need people from different backgrounds bringing their different perspectives and expertise in tackling some of the challenges that we face. We also need to involve the community in our work. So really go out there, talk to the community, get their perspectives and understanding, bring them to the table, involve them in decision-making. And Sachita shared a really great quote. She said, involve the community in decision-making so they feel like partners and not just beneficiaries. We also had an example from PNG where in PNG there is currently no specific government agency responsible for WASH, but there has been a WASH policy developed at the national level that sits with the Department of National Planning. And the Department of National Planning has a management information system that collects data about WASH on an online platform. And they're starting to engage with more NGOs and governments to register any sort of WASH data on that platform. And they are currently in the process of rolling it out across all the districts in the country. So that data management and sharing also needs to occur at multiple different levels between multiple different government agencies. And so I guess, in essence, water and WASH really is a cross-cutting issues, and you can't ignore things like gender and social inclusion and so on. So you really need to work with the responsible authorities to address issues holistically. But, you know, there are large sort of structural challenges in the context that we work in, like land ownership, gender issues, power dynamics, you know, financial barriers and things like that. So breaking those challenges is one of the biggest sort of issues that we're going to face more and more into the future. In terms of the second question, what unique skill sets and experiences do early career professionals bring to the table? I guess one thing is that the issue of WASH is quite large, and young professionals alone cannot bite the whole issue all at once. So we had a great suggestion that, you know, whatever fields you're working in and want to specialize in, find your place in that specific area and contribute to the bigger issue from that angle. So really approach it from the angle that you specialize in. So, for example, in Cambodia, CSW has been working on youth capacity development with youth from different backgrounds. So this really fosters that multi-sectoral collaboration between young professionals who can then take those skills into the workforce and see issues from multiple lenses and solve problems holistically. So I guess in summary, early career professionals should really think long-term. We come to the table with fresh perspectives and optimisms because ultimately these are issues that are going to directly impact our futures. So we come with that passion and drive to address them into the future. So yeah, I guess interdisciplinary collaboration and optimism and drive are some of the key sort of themes that came up in our conversations. So now I'll pass on to Hannah to summarize her session.
Thanks, Tanvi. And like all others, we had really interesting discussions in our team as well. We focused on the question with respect to water resource management and WASH. what is the most pressing climate challenge in a country that you work in, and what could be done better, or what is being done to address these problems and challenges. We had a diverse group of people that have worked in a whole sort of range of different geographical spaces. But there were probably two, I guess, big challenges. One of the challenges that I think is experienced in many countries is just the access to data on climate change or change itself. There really is little data being collected that we can say what is exactly taking place in many of these contexts. And even in countries like Australia, where this data is being collected and we do sort of have the evidence that climate is changing, there's sort of a big political push to not do anything, or if people do sort of accept that climate change is happening, there's an idea that those changes will take place in the future, and we shouldn't worry about it too much just now. We also discussed that any of the climate changes that are happening are just putting additional pressures on water demand, or on those other practices that are already stressing water resources, both in terms of their quantity and their quality. So in Democratic Republic of Congo, mining is a big pressure, and climate change is just adding to the sort of impact that mining is already having. In New Zealand, the agriculture industry is really sort of degrading water resources, and climate change drought is only sort of adding to that. And we also talked about how climate change, sometimes we get these long droughts that are reducing water resources, but we're also getting heavy floods and sort of intense rainfall periods that are actually just causing floods and sort of landslides and soil erosion and water turbidity in water quality. So in terms of the solutions, we sort of talked about things that are already happening. So there's already investment in data collection, in early water systems, and sort of have suggested that governments take integrated water management a lot more seriously. And there's also, just, I guess, support for those last end activities like trafficking water into water-stressed communities that are, just without water at the moment. And I guess just trying to come up with policies that reduce the demand, the sort of multiple demand on water resources, and trying to get industries to sort of, I guess, take a bit more accountability on their role in the water sector. And I'm not sure if we have time to discuss the next question, but the next question was on what do early career professionals need from the sector in terms of to put them in the right position to fight against climate change over the course of their careers. One thing that I think everyone mentioned and agreed with was just getting people out into the field and sort of being with communities, seeing what communities experience, and also just learning how to talk with communities, how to do that sort of stakeholder engagement. We saw that was a key learning piece for early career professionals, and that will support us sort of going into later stages of our career as well. So in terms of support, it's really just, offering education programs, postgraduate programs that have that strong fieldwork component. And also just having behavioural change is a key part of education programs as well. So over to the fourth breakout room.
Hello, everyone. I'll just jump in. My name is Diana Gonzalez. I work at the Institute for Sustainable Futures at UTS. I'm Jeremy's colleague. So I facilitated the fourth breakout room, and I'll be very brief. We're saving the best for last. But our first question was, how can we best influence decision makers to act for gender, disability, and social inclusion in climate resilient WASH? So our question was about social inclusion and climate. So first of all, when we're talking about decision makers and influencing them, we thought that it was really important to identify and understand the context. So identify who are the stakeholders, because as it was mentioned in one of the previous groups, often WASH services are delivered by several different ministries, let alone if you also need to consider gender and social inclusion and climate change, you can have a wide range of different stakeholders. So understanding the government structures and who are the key players and how they can be influenced is really key. But we highlighted the importance of bringing evidence-based approaches for influencing decision makers, including costs, and both costs of how much does it cost to act, but also how much will it cost to not do anything. And there's social costs implied, environmental costs, etc. We also highlighted the importance of youth group mobilization and united our voices together. There was a really nice quote from one of the participants that he said, raise our voices in a collective way, highlighting the power of networks, and the bigger the voice, the louder the voice. And that's something that's come up before in all of the groups. So already is just the power of the networks. And lastly, just the ways of communicating with decision makers. So we talked about storytelling, communicating at a human level with these decision makers, and also inviting these high-ranking decision makers to visit the affected community so that they can see for themselves what is actually needed. And our last question was about unique skill sets that the early career professionals bring to the table. And we agree with the previous group that they said that we are in an excellent position to dedicate ourselves. We have a drive. We have also come with fresh eyes, fresh points of view, and we are well positioned to come up with innovative ideas and approaches. We have eagerness to know more, and we're hungry to find new solutions. And we have knowledge of the problem. We are aware. We have a high sense of urgency. And I think that we're also coming up with very inclusive mindsets that maybe wasn't the norm always. So that's our unique contribution to the sector. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Diana, and thanks to all the facilitators for the report back, and thanks for everyone for the really great discussion. And I hope it was really interesting for everyone that was involved. I realize we're a bit over time now, so thank you for hanging around. We are closing now. I've posted a link in the chat box to a survey. So as you exit, please click on that link before you go. There's just 2 quick questions about what you would like to get out of the Water and Wash Futures Conference that's happening early next year as an early career professional, and what's your preferred medium of learning? And that would be really useful data for us that hopefully we can build on some of the things you brought up. So thanks everyone very much. Thanks to all the speakers, the panelists that we had. Thanks very much to Hannah, Tanvi, for helping me planning this session and facilitating the breakout rooms. Thanks to Diana for helping facilitate the breakout rooms. Thanks for Karen for the support, Danielle and Dennis also for supporting on the tech side, and Regina and her role in supporting the entire conference. So really hope to see a lot of you at the Water and Wash Futures Conference in February in Brisbane next year. If not, I hope we come in contact with each other other ways. I've put my email address in the chat box as well. If you have any thoughts that you would want to share with the Water and Wash Futures committee, please feel free to email me. And again, please take the survey before you go. So thanks sorry for going over, and thanks everyone for attending. Have a good day.